Hawaiian Island. Do you remember me? I might look a little different today. 65, going on 66 years. But you look much the same. My parents brought me here when I was just born, right from the hospital. This was not on Tamuning's property. The beach didn't have this much dirt. I'm sure you've seen it change over time. You've seen fishermen come and go, jet skiers, sailors, ships, and in World War II, Dunka Beach, right over there, with the Japanese coming over the fringing reef. This is a traditional cultural property. You know it, I know it, and we hope everyone else knows it. It's been a life-changing experience growing up here. Philip and I spent a lot of time in the waters. Rasai made us a little boat made of tin and wood. It's an emotional thing to think back. We never learned to fish here, but we watched many people fish different ways. When I started the fishing project at Lupang, I had no intention of predicting what fishermen would share. They tell us that fishermen lie, that the real small fish is really that big, or that they're not catching fish the traditional way. I've learned from interviewing all the fishermen over the last, well, maybe 15 years, that it's not the method that's the tradition, is it? It's the fishing. Whether it's inside the reef or over the reef, whether it's rod and reel, deep sea fishing, or trolling. Any way you look at it, it's still fishing. And that is the tradition. Let's hope everybody understands that by the time they see everything that fishermen have to teach us about why they fish and who benefits. John, do you fish because you like it? Do you fish because you need to? Or do you fish because you have nothing else better to do?
I fish because I love to fish. It's not that I don't have nothing to do. I got plenty to do. But fishing, I love fishing.
Fishing to me has always been a passion. You know, it's part of the culture. Everybody appreciates fish. Everybody enjoys the fish on the table. And it's a good dietary need for this island. It's hard to explain it for people on the outside. Fishing is more an internal thing, and not everybody is capable of being a fisherman. Just like not everybody's capable of being a doctor or a lawyer or something else and be successful, because it takes certain inner talents.
You know, we enjoyed the hunt as little kids growing up. We had the jungle, the beach, and the ocean, and that was our playground. So, and much of our weekends were spent on the beach, and that's what we did. And you know, it was always the thrill of the hunt and catching fish, and of course we all enjoyed eating fish. So that was that's what I guess you could say got us hooked in becoming fishermen.
Yeah, I am hooked, and you know, I can talk for all the fishermen. They are all hooked.
People pay thousands of dollars to come to our island, to come out to our place, just to catch the sun. Now to go out and enjoy yourself by doing something that pleases you, you can lock out the rest of the world. Every day's a good day of fishing.
Okay, the first time I remember fishing, I was 4 years old, and my dad took me out to a spot in Pidi, and we went fishing for i'i. So he set me up with the rod and reel. I didn't know how to cast yet. He didn't teach me that part yet. But remember, he cast the rod out for me, and I would get to reel it in. And then I'd feel that I'd see the first little splash in the water, and then there'd be a tug. And I remember I could feel it in my forearms, that little tug from the i'i, pulling on my rod and reel. And it was the most exciting feeling that I ever had. And I was in shock that I had something on here, and my mouth, I just know my mouth was open, my eyes were big. And my dad was giving me instructions, okay son, You have to reel it in now. Don't let there be any slack in the line. And I started reeling it in. There's little splashes and I see the fish coming towards me. And my dad picked up the line, unhooked the fish, and he put it in my hands. I can remember touching that fish. It would be jumping in my hands a little bit, some of the scales falling off. That was the best experience I had. That's the first fishing moment I remember. The most important thing that my dad wanted me to get when I went on a fishing excursion with him is that he wanted me to catch something. He didn't take me out on a random day. He made sure that the moon phase was right, that the weather was nice, that the water wasn't going to be rough, so that everything could be fun for me. I wouldn't go there and feel like it's a waste of time. Fishing had to be a fun experience, and that's the way he passed fishing on to me, and that's why I fell in love with it so much.
I began fishing at the age of 5. My father, Sus Castro Borja, taught my brother Ken, my brother Jeff, and myself, 3 of us. We'd fish on the shorelines of East Agania, using hook and line, as well as Castro's Beach or Napson up on the northern area of Guam. He also fished as a young boy growing up during the war. He provided fish and food for his family as a teenager during the Japan occupation. And shortly after we learned how to swim, he'd take us net fishing, or we'd wait on the shoreline while my father would do some net fishing within the reefs. We never took any swim lessons or whatnot. We pretty much got thrown in the water and learned that way, and we'd be watched by our older siblings, or the ones that could really watch us in the water. And of course I had some close calls where I nearly drowned, but my brother and my sister were there to help me. And kind of no formal training, just get in there and learn on your own. And that's pretty much how we learned, growing up in the 70s. That's how we did in the early 80s. We picked up spearfishing for myself, my brother and I. I was about 9 years old when I began to start to spearfish, and from there we learned, we taught each other, how to become better spearfishermen, along with the Castro brothers. The children of Manuel D. Castro, there's Patrick Pierce and Paul Castro, the late Paul Castro, and also Frank Perez. We all grown up together. We also, we fished together as a group, and from there we refined what we enjoyed doing, and we continue to do it. I enjoy life, and from my everyday career in human resources, I look forward to the weekends and going fishing, because fishing is a way of life for me, and I enjoy eating fish. My entire family enjoys eating fish, and I've made a lot of friends just through the fishing industry throughout the island, Hawaii. It's allowed me the opportunity to travel throughout the Pacific, on fishing adventures and making new friends.
What would you do if you can't fish anymore?
Wow, that's a tough one. Probably stay home and do nothing, work.
Actually, my father has taught me how to fish since I was a little boy, following him, being the Tiligwagwa, helping him fishing since I was just a little boy. All his brothers are fishermen. They all make nets. Then that's where I got most of my knowledge of fishing, is through my uncles, my father. He already taught me how to throw the net, but when it was the Manahawk season and the whole clan comes together and we go all down, my uncles and their sons will go out, throw the net. My father will make me throw the net also. So all the men let their sons catch the fish, and we put it all in the same pot. And that was a really fun and nice time. And of course, it always have to be when there's no school. First school, then I can go fishing. My dad taught me how to make nets, but in those days I kind of like put it away. So Simon, a good friend of mine, Simon Camacho, who really actually brought it back into me, or I guess remind me and taught me again how to do it again. So he was the one that kicked me back to start the net again. He's a good net maker. My nephew is another great net maker, Federico Guerrero, which is what I'm proud of, because now that's my next generation already that knows. I'm trying to teach my grandson I make them their own net, so they're catching their own tia.
I started fishing when I was a young kid, roughly probably about 8 years old when I started fishing rod and reel for what they call EE back then. When we first started, you know, when we're young, you start off with the rod and reel because when the EE season started running, you can use rod and reel or throw net, but you know, at that time we were too young to throw the net, so it was too small, so they taught us how to use the rod and reel to catch EE. So until you graduate from that, and then you start going in, you know, when you get older, you start throwing net, you'll be able to carry the net and stuff. So my dad had been fishing out here for the longest time, so I picked up the trade from him. My dad used to own a boat. When I started getting a little older, maybe about 12, 13 years old, I started going out with him. And that's where I learned how to watch what he's doing while he's driving. How does he operate the boat in certain ways of the waves that come at you. So it's just through experience that he felt that I was ready to take the boat out, that I knew how to operate the boat. After that, I just started going out, taking the boat out by myself with my friends at about 15 years old.
Prior to being a mayor, I was a fisherman and a hunter. But growing up, mostly I was fishing most of the time as a young boy growing up. Where I live now in Hawaiian, where all the neighborhood kids would go out during the summer, between June and August, September, and we would go out there with our fishing poles, pisong pio, and we would be catching the juvenile trevally, EE, and growing up, what we do is we make plans to bring our own lemon, salt, rice, and hot pepper. When we catch a lot, we'll get together and make kilawin, and go home, take a rest, come back out. We go early in the morning and then come back in the late, just before dark. That's pretty much our lifestyle during the summer, catching EE, and fishing. Then, as we grew older, one of my neighbors, my Uncle Ben Rages, he and my dad would coordinate the gaddy. Even prior to that, there was an old man I remember, Tunwan Napti. The son is Lorenzo Napti, who owns the store right next to our house. Well, the old man would always likes to take me to go on and pick up his fish at the fishware, the giga. So he would use me to go into the pocket of the fishware, and I would be using the net to scoop up all the fish while he would be putting it in his boat. And as I grew older and going into my junior years and my senior years, I used to fish with my cousin Joe Champaco, Jose Champaco. He's one of the old-time fishermen. He and his brothers they all fish. I used to go with them gill net fishing. We'll go either that or we'll go catch lobster on the reef. I learned how to dive for fish, and when just some of our friends. But then I hooked up with my girlfriend's father, who fishes a lot, and we go net fishing as well as diving. Later on, I learned how to catch octopus, swim for octopus and walk for octopus. Then my cousin John Meno was the one who taught me how to look for the signs of the octopus. My uncle, Bernabe Barcinas, he's a talajero. He taught me how to go and catch the skipjacks, and we catch them by the schools. Here in Mauricio, if you love to fish, it's hard not to learn how to fish, because you had a lot of fishermen fish various methods, different methods of fishing. So you just select who you want to go with.
When I was younger, before we moved to Guam, I was always interested in fishing. So I was fishing in the States already before I moved back to Guam. And but I always fished in freshwater, mostly freshwater settings, rivers, streams, creeks. And so I was just intrigued with the methods that would be used in the ocean. I was 16 years old when I first started fishing on Guam. The fishing method that I first practiced was Sensulu Manhole with a Mr. Vicente Lujan from Iling Kapili from Jigo. And we fished in Piti at what is now the Piti Fish Preserves.
So how long did you fish with the old man?
Oh, we fished like that for, maybe 2-3 years.
How are you associated with him? Was he your trainer?
Actually, I was dating his daughter, and so he would assign me certain tasks to do around the house, such as helping him to feed the pigs, being his fishing partner, cleaning the fish net, things like that.
Did he teach you how to mend it?
No, he did mend his own nets. He did mend all of his nets, but he never taught me how to do that. I think he didn't teach me how to do that because I didn't show an interest in learning how to fix the net. I was interested in the technique.
Did you enjoy that technique?
Very much, very much. It was very enjoyable because the entire family was involved and it was a communal activity. Everybody was in a very good mood when we did this. The expectation of going down and catching fish and just everybody working together was most enjoyable.
Now, were you in the practice of supplying fish for the family? Is that why you were doing it? Or were you being prepped to be a son-in-law?
Well, I think I was being prepared to be a son-in-law at the time. But it was from my experiences with the old man. The old man is the one that taught me that when you go fishing, you should always bear in mind that you have a responsibility to other family members who don't have men to fish for them, or they can't fish for themselves, or they're too old usually. What followed that, I continued to be interested in fishing, and so I wanted to explore other fishing techniques. And so I began to learn how to spearfish inside and outside the reef. And so I acquired my own fishing equipment and began going out on my own. And so a Sulu fisherman will move about the reef and spear the trapped fish. I learned that technique from my father's brother, Vicente Iriarte is his name. And he learned from his in-laws who are from Piti, and they were traditional Sulu fishermen.
I was 7 years old back in 1952. My first encounter with fishing, and I loved it. I was heading home from Adaloop with my sister on board the bus to Jonia, and I noticed a group of fishermen in East Agana. And just something said, hey, let's go check it out. So I told my sister, you know where to get off. Tell Mom and Dad I'll be home soon. The bus driver let me get off, and I jumped off, ran over there, and they were catching a tulai. And lo and behold, I was holding the net, helping them out, just watching, and the old man there said, after it was getting dusk, said, come here, son. This is for you. What's your name? Johnny. Johnny Tatano. And so he said, this is for you. This is your putty. Take it home to your mom and dad. And it was a bunch of fish, and I didn't have no place to put it, so I took my shirt, and he said, oh, okay, innovative, put it in there. I made my little shirt a basket, and I took off heading for home. And I hitchhiked all the way to Jonia. And with what I caught, what they gave me, I still gave 3 or 4 to the guy that gave me a ride, and I jumped off. And lo and behold, I got my first butt whipping. My dad said, how come your sister came home alone? And I was offering him the fish. I said, here, Dad, this is for you and Mom. And that didn't matter. First things first. So he gave me an ass whipping, and then he went in and fried the fish. And he took me around other escapades. We fished down at Camp Wittig, and then he took me to Talaza fishing for tiao, and I was the chili guagua. And I kind of picked up the sense that fish when it's not in abundance, it's a delicacy. But it's a favorite dish of the family, especially my mom and dad. From there, I never forgot the experience on Guam. Came back to Guam, and right off the bat, I met an old gentleman by the name of Tomat, old Tomas Cruz from Agana. And his style and everything was, I followed him around, and from there I started picking up different pieces of equipment like Talazas. We wanted to go chinchulu tiao. You needed a chinchulu. Well, it was always up to the boys. They'd always gather around and say, man, we want to go. Okay, but we need the equipment. And I'd come up with the means, and we'd end up with the equipment, and to this day, I still got most of the equipment.
I got to Saipan in June of 1974. I had an interest in spearfishing since probably my earliest childhood. I was interested in scuba diving and anything that had to do with the ocean, I think because of the old Sea Hunt show that I got to watch as a kid. And that's the reason I ended up being out here. Was when I was in college, somebody showed me a Peace Corps recruitment poster that was from Micronesia. And in the late 60s, Truck, or Chuk as it's known now, was just becoming a well-known dive spot because of the wrecks. And I had known about it probably since the late 60s. And I was thinking, man, this would be a way to get out and be able to do diving out in Chuk. And when I got out of college, I remembered about that Peace Corps opportunity. At some point, maybe 4 or 5 months after I'd graduated, I contacted the Peace Corps and was accepted, but for the Marianas, not for Chuk. After I went through the training, the 2-month training, I was placed in Tanapak village. And they put me there because they knew I was interested in fishing, and because Tanapak was the fishing village on the island. You know, the people there had a reputation for being fishermen. And so that's why I ended up in that village. And in those days, people, especially in that village, you subsisted through fishing and farming and, you know, things that you grew. And so I stayed with the Capileo family. And nobody else in that family had any interest. They weren't, as far as I can remember, nobody was a Talaza fisherman or a line. Maybe they went out for EE or something when they were running, but there were no fishermen in that family except this guy they called Isidro Kennedy, who was the hired hand guy that I used to fish with. The handyman, I would say hired hand, but he worked on behalf of the family and they took care of him.
Was he Carolinian?
Yes. And he was a really good daytime spear fisherman, so we would go outside, but this was all inside the reef. You know, we just walk off the beach and he would go north, I would go south. We'd fish for a few hours and come back in with our fish and turn them over to the family, and that's what that's what the family ate that night. The mother of the family was Kitagwa, and I can remember coming back one time and she looked at me and she goes, "You catch skinny fish." And man, I was so crushed when she told me that. Oh God, give me a break. I'm doing the best I can do, you know, at least I'm bringing in some fish. But that's how I got started. And so I spent probably a year in Tanapak village and, learned the basic style of the way they spearfish. Now, I didn't learn anything about Talaza or, the net fishing or anything like that. I was strictly a spear guy.
I was born in Hawaii, but came here when I was 9 years old because my father was hired under Civil Service, PWC, in the late 40s. That's when I got it. We're originally Hawaiian Filipino. I've always been a fisherman. I've always loved the water. My dad always said, there is nothing you can't eat from the ocean. Everything, the only thing you cannot eat is the rocks. But everything else, you can eat everything. And my dad taught us very, very, very well. But he had his so-called traditional cultural fishing, but actually his type of fishing was all Hawaii taught, their type of fishing. And in Hawaii, we have different techniques, different methods of fishing compared to what Guam had. My goal was to be accepted, to be a CHamoru in here on the island. Because we lived close to the ocean, I would always venture out to the reef. And we moved up to Camp Watkins, That's the old hospital area, Sapun Point, Rick's Reef. And I would always venture down during the low tide. And one day I was down there and I saw this old man, or the three old men there, you know. And I was so intrigued because they were cast netting. They were cast netting on the reef, you know. I would, you know, kind of stay in the back, you know, and I said, whoa. So every time when these guys would throw the net, you know, they would go and they start picking up all the fish in this shell right on the reef, you know, on the reef margin. And I was so intrigued with it, like, golly, I said, wow, that's exciting. So there was a rock there. I would sit on that rock on a good low tide because I know that Pansalan and Montanani, and they always fish together. They always cast net. They always Talaza together. I know they're gonna come because of good low tide. I would sit on that rock and wait. You know, sometimes the old man will, you know, pass me and look at me and all this, you know. Hi, you know. A week goes by, you know, and I'm there in the low tide. A week goes by. Finally, Mr. Pansalan comes over to me and says, in CHamoru, I layu ko muskwela, liko, muskwela. Meaning, did you go to school? I said, yeah, I go to school. He said, Ana, esta kana gay tempo gini. Then he says, do you want to learn how to Talaza? I said, yes, sir. You know, and I was so excited. I said, when are my chances to learn how to Talaza, right? He says, okay. Because every day when I come down here, you're down here and you don't say nothing but Ana, I know that you want to learn how to Talaza. I said, yeah. So he says, okay. So the first thing you're going to do now is I'm going to teach you. Mr. Pansalan was one individual that always had a guagua woven from coconut leaf. He would take out that guagua. The first thing you got to learn is, here, put this on. He says, you're going to be my chili guagua. and I was so excited because the old man says, oh man, I'm gonna go Talaza, right? And I put it on, I tied it with me, and and he tells me, he was telling me the technique, so and so. From there on, him and Montanani and Tanga, I would come down every time on a low tide, they would teach me how to Talaza. Sometimes they would be given the net. And during the time, their sons also, Frank and Joe, were also being brought up too. Joe Pansalan is my age, and we were going to elementary to high school during the same time, and they were also being taught by their dad. They were always following their dad too. So they were the first individuals that showed me that this is how to throw net.
My father was a fisherman since probably back in the 40s, 50s with the Tembat group.
Experience-nya tutuhonnya setahun di tempun gera. Peskakaji ban Japanese ki tempun gera. Za jigi efficientnya anem pagumanolo mi Japanese nei sangauni setahun na ma peskakaji magoftungu gi na peskadót gi jani tembat jani mangacongnya nei. Za fio man matago po fam peska. Za ito ri kineninya nei man mananai Japanese. Pes man mananai loki tsupa pada fasya na fina Japanese nei man mananai ini za pinat peskan etok sa loki sta tao gi za afia sa bula storia sa ngangan yung pada na tempo igi tinituhon no nei si tao antes fiwa maktuga tu gigima fia pemeska an sabalus ti sa tempe peska an domingo sa si Jus manos misagi an domingo lo an kada ogan sabalu nei tetap kita tamak si tatau pemeskan dos klasis di Talaza pada tiau pad ses jun pad kitsu pada sino eji pemeskan cuman sulu jan si tenbat jan pad si parin kerisu.
But he never did like to take us, the kids. It's dangerous out there. You know that group, that Tembat group. You know the way they talk. You know when a bunch of guys get together. I'm figuring that's why he didn't want to take us. And you know, when they're too busy fishing, he can't be looking at a little 8-9-year-old on the side that God knows what he's doing in the water. I think that's why it is.
Tiu dadalak sta tao sa dikikiao gomos patgon ne pes fiwa azao ne kasista maktu gigima gela sotsu gegan ne za zao pa benagaskas to lui I ramentannya ne tekcana yang tiosnya itabenya guina tempo distiane dikikio ne fanan ni teo gofasu fanan distiane sai sonnya zu ne ma fetsa sta Ugoftungu ko esta ni sistema tulay katabenya sa esta si gay maduk ne za enigi kana kanda sobalu zu ezigi bidodo hu inanagwa i ramentanya trustesnya pesu kakana pesinanau afatitina za kekelagin pada frilitu gian ne piore ji ante puntia no metalaza enigi za na dotsun ji dekani fin ne vi kotruna tia pesa afrilitus na parosino kekelagin lo disti edzo enigi na azama tension no put pomeska lo titutu no trabe pomeska ne lo ginin edzo na experienza na malago tumungu to mamano bidana na tatao ni pokokoni zi manmanni siya na nengkano experience ko ni chomotsu fresco na guyan o hasu taimanus tatao na kokoni zulotia sangongan niya kopara o konyo na tagin-tagini lo pinatmasa kokoni man laam ko na Maniluhu.
There's this one incident at Boat Basin. I think it was like 11, 12 years old again. It was EE season. And my older brother, Carlos, and Andy, and I, and my dad, early in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. You know the pisod at Moylan's, when they, you know that bamboo? They tie a line and a hook and a rubber glove, and you know the way they fish without the reel. Anyway, my dad was teaching Carlos how to do it. And you know, we're on the back. I says, don't nobody go behind Carlos, you know, because he's going to be doing the first cast that he did like that. I run, you know, across behind him. That thing stuck on me here. When we got into the car with the hook still here, my brother Andy and Carlos kept whacking me in the head. The first thing that they tell you don't do, you do. The fishing trip ended early in half an hour. It wasn't even daybreak. We had to wake up Dr. Fox to spray that numbing thing here and take out the hook. You know, the hook was still here in the truck. I keep getting whacked. Poke that, punch that. They bandage, you know, they put a bandage here. Going home, I still get whacked at. I don't know if my brothers remember that, but I sure did. But later on, you know, I started maybe fishing late 70s, early 80s with the rod and reel. And then probably in the mid to late 80s, I met this guy, Alan Nicholas from Jigo. He was doing the Talaza and I was doing the rod and reel. So he was asking me, how do I catch those, you know, those jacks up at Anderson and Retidia and stuff like that? He says, you know, just the rubber glove. And he starts the net and says, why don't we, you teach me how to throw it and I'll teach you how, you know, the lures and the hooks and the lines. So we started going up to Anderson and we started catching fish like every other night.
Pues istiedzo fiwa antes inanaw an gen makumbida ni manatungo na papeska ni guija sumesedi pabehono sa 18 tuhonno pomeskan puengi jani kinadu za fanogi taimano muliu van puengi na mangongan manadan guian mahongang endigi siya za sita tao fia sangan na piligu di peskan puengi sa experience nya ni I alu jani alu puengi za itekcu ini asasangan itekcu am puengi mangalalapin pesa angin pabe peska kalan itu na anu esta ki maigus tatau pesa jena lengas na no ono lo adaya wa tigi pes mafatu gati gima ki satamak jani tigi manana esta gaigista na managasga siguan da gaigi konais pes gana bena tatungas tatau na pungaskan puenyo pesa jena anay lumaam ko na edson na hadili na unasinya na za ugogo fadayo pes mafatuhalom mi guyan na za pes mamakikilas na kaya to kita gidi ini custom CHamoru kaya wasus ta na di be malefa lo pinatizanya na pabe peskan I rubentasyon na nigi gisan hizung gimatingan nigi kumekeleng na tao Zagi enzigi na klaseng peskadót to pa. Zagi ninenno na hutungo inaanyay guyan siya. Enigi na malalang na silingwahi. Ang ginuli guyan sa moling na minedong na
utotokca pesazo sasatu zo cucuri gatigi ma pesezuna anu plantanai hujum gila bado zona gagas kas nih edzigi na maktusi tatawa manarima leng tasing guaguan edzigi tasing guaguan edu fanan ko mekiling ni alo tasing guaguan edzi patgun tangisun manunungu zo mona todo diferensial na klasing guian jago simput tantinau na tatungo Jangan kita praktikan Arlene, jangan kita praktikan sti custom berta. Malingu to di tiningu.
Fishing for me started as a kid. I guess maybe 6, 7 years old, hanging around the neighborhood with the other fishermen. We have some fishermen in Sinahania where I grew up. It was the Gomez family, and they got me interested in fishing. Then my Martinez family also next door to me. They took me out as a little boy and took me under their arms. Rod and reel, spear fishing, scuba fishing. Then the beginning was the potato, the Coke bottle or the can or whatever, bamboo diving later on. But that's inside the reef, and then I ventured as I got older when I got time to go over the reef. But like I said, my background was a farming family. Then my uncle, we got into the boats, got into fishing off the shore. That's a different style again. Majority of whatever's left in the CHamoru language comes from the ocean. There is no such thing as a traditional fishing method. If you go throughout the world, everybody has an evolution. Everyone evolves. You may say, well, pre-contact Spanish, they were doing this. Yeah, but what were they doing 2000 before that? You don't have evidence. So what do you call tradition? Tradition is an ever-changing process. The tradition is not in the harvesting part. It's what you do with the harvest. That is the tradition. That has not changed. I mean, you got to remember that if you consider that a fishing village back then, which is mostly what we had around here, because you got, I think it was estimated 300 villages all along the coastline prior to contact. But fishing villages, you could take the whole village down to the ocean and corral the fish by bodies, and using palm fronds to scoop them into the shoreline and trap them and corral them. Today, there's not a fishing village left, and except for the occasional tulay run like in Inarahan or Talavofo, even Talavofo, or even Aganya, you're gonna have people come and show up and help. But it takes a lot more work because you don't have that mass amount of people to assist you. So the nets are needed, and the nets are greater and stronger, but the nets benefit the person owning it. But the thing is, the person owns it, bought it in the Philippines or made it himself, and it cost him money. So he has to recover. So the sharing no longer becomes everybody gets a patti. Now it's everybody has to recognize that the owner of the net gets half, and then everybody else gets a bucket or half a bucket or whatever for their share. Growing up part of my life in Iran and watching all these activities, you know, because the patti they got, the people that helped out with the scooping or surrounding of the fish, they also had remember that they got a share. So when later on, when their bananas were ripened, they gave it to the fishermen. Okay, so it was more the bartering system or Tsinsuli system that we had that made it perpetuate. But now in today's society, you don't have the same village concept. People are at work. They got a government job or private sector job. They're there from 8 to 5. Fisherman standing on the shoreline with his truck and his net, and he's looking around saying, well, I got to depend on my own boys to go to surround this fish. And then you have a few people left in the village that they'll patti too if they show up. And the same thing happens down here at the boat basin. You see a whole flock of people coming down here, and they're all helping out, pull out the fish from the nets and help scooping out, and they get a share. But nobody ever gets upset. Nobody gets mad. The fisherman, even on his worst day of fishing, of bringing something in or harvesting something that is seasonal, he's happy that he's able to share that gift from the ocean. I think that's the bottom line, and that is the traditional part.
But it's really a nice presentation you guys did, and I really appreciate it. It was a good job.
I'm glad you stopped crying.
Hey, you know, that time, my dad just passed away when you did that interview. You know, I learned a lot from him. That's why I still feel that, you know.
Never forget your father.
I never will.
Very interesting to see how each one of you guys put in your comment on our ways of on this island of so-called our traditional fishing ways, our methods and stuff. You know, it all comes down to like each and every one of us. We were taught by the best, and that was you know, your parents.
It's part of what he enjoys, and it's good to support him in that way.
Of course.
So, you know, he enjoys fishing.
Yeah. And you're happy, right? You like fish?
I'm happy because that's how he tried to court me.
This is an awesome project, and hearing stories, the oral histories are very important so that they can carry on.
I forgot about that interview.
It's been a long time.
A little mamalo, but I forgot that we did that. Yeah. That's so long ago. It feels like another lifetime. You know, I actually felt a little emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved hearing the stories from the other fishermen and getting their perspectives on it. You know, I loved that. I was telling Ron, I didn't even know he had this other brother.
It was great, man. It's so important. It touched my heart, and I got to see my brother Ed. I didn't know he was interviewed. I love the stories, every one of you. It's documenting it is so important.
Oh man, I love it. And everybody here. But the tradition, they're right. We gotta keep it. So now I'm passing it to my daughter and my grandsons for grandkids.
He said about all of it, but saying that, it really makes me really proud and prouder to be married to a fisherman. And I know where Bennett's coming from about, oh, they love to fish.
This film made me reflect a little bit on some of my history, because this is about 10 years ago now. I was still a student before this boy was born, and I'm really glad that you have it captured there, because I'm forgetting pieces of that story.
Really?
I don't think I would have said it the same way today.
Good.
So I'm really glad that you have that captured for that memory.
This was an experience because I've known you all my life.
Oh my God.
But I didn't realize that the Mr. Pansalan that Dancel was speaking about was your dad.
Yeah, well, I heard a little bit of that from Johnny with him speaking to Dancel, and just listening to his story and watching his expression really touched my heart, because you know, I'm the daughter of a fisherman and the wife of a fisherman, and so I was really impressed with the video. And I love how everybody told their story, that they learned their fishing from their parents. And the one thing about tradition is sharing. And that's what everybody shared in this video. And that's what, you know, tradition is all about here on Guam.
I would like to say this about that particular video. How it shows the bonding of our basic Guamanians. CHamoru's. Each one of these gentlemen here has a specialty in the art of fishing. The video, thank you.
My pleasure.
You did a very good job, and I can imagine what the rest looks like.
First of all, this is a long time overdue for the fishermen of Guam. Everyone here that's here at the interview are well respected in the fishing community. Very good video, very good showcase of every fisherman that you interviewed and their character. We all see each other, we all know each other, and we all respect each other's fishing method, right? So I'm very pleased at what you presented.
It's the first time you've seen this.
Well, except that I've been involved with all of your productions, and to me, it's great. You know, I don't think it could be any better. And something like this has never been done, to my knowledge, in Guam. And it's something that's necessary. You know, if you don't record this kind of stuff, it's going to be lost. You know, it's Rlene's passion to do these things, and I support it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad that you and I had a little argument a couple weeks ago. putting this together, because she's never done this, and maybe a little bit of my academic background, I really wanted all of you to come together just to see it, to hear it. You outdid everything I could possibly imagine, and I want to thank you.